Okay, this video is from the book Medical Reformation. And the topic for today is, are coffee and tea good for you? All right, and by the way, these are very profitable foods. These are billion-dollar commercial foods. And so whatever happens is, whenever a food's very profitable, all these bogus industry-funded so-called research studies are really just advertisement, get paid for, and it's like the old term, a bodyguard of lies follows around all these commercial foods. Almost all the popular commercial foods, they all stink. They're all bad for you. I think anything with caffeine in it is bad for you in general. Anything with soy in it is bad for you in general. Anything with this GMO corn or soy is bad for you in general, etc. All right? Okay, so the question is going to be why? Well, first of all, when you look at research study, whoever, as the old saying is, he who pays the piper calls the tune. And big food pays for they own the journals, they own the scientists, they own the whole game. The scientist has to promote the product. Whoever pays for the research controls the results. Regular people are too poor to pay for anything. So they really have no influence on them. Nobody gives a crap about regular people. The proles are the peasants of the modern world, and they're basically considered expendable and irrelevant. And people might say nice things about them, but no one actually really cares about them because there's no money in caring about them. The money comes from tricking them and ripping them off. Okay, any food that's a big moneymaker gets lots of publicity research saying it's good. Here's a quote by Lewis Carroll. He says, if you want to inspire confidence, give plenty of statistics. It does not matter if they should be accurate or even intelligible, as long as there are enough of them. All right. Okay, in a lot of my books, I have conversations. So SR is the abbreviation for skeptical reader. So somebody asking questions. VP is the abbreviation for vegan prophet. And then PMP is Plant Man Prometheus. Okay, so Plant Man Prometheus says, when big money talks, the truth shuts up. And that is definitely true. Basically, big money can get you to believe almost anything. And I really mean it. I'm an old guy now. I'm 60 years old. So I've seen a lot of people change their opinions and their viewpoints 100% from when I was young. And it's just because that's what the sort of the big media pressure pushes them to believe. And I think one of the reasons why I'm pretty good at resisting that BS is because I'm kind of antisocial. I don't even own a phone. I don't ever watch TV, so I'm not as sucked into all this popular stuff. I don't use social media other than make my YouTube channel. I do very little. Okay. So big money uses information flooding to dominate the debate. Yeah, I've had friends tell me there's no way they could ever know what's true in nutrition because they constantly see contradictory information. And I think in the end, you have to pick some people you trust more than others and then read about stuff on your own and go with there. What I like about the whole, plant-based diet is it's logically consistent. It's consistent with what our ancestors did. It's consistent with the biochemistry research. It's consistent with the epidemiology. So all that makes it a lot more reassuring. I've gone to bookstores and I looked at the nutrition books, like a used bookstore where they got a lot of books, and 99 out of 100 are blatantly false. And you're lucky if 1 out of 100 is a good book. Okay, on the internet, there's about 99, BS health information sites for one that's good and tells you the truth. I've talked to thousands of people about nutrition, and I can tell you the vast majority of the people I talk to, they think that coffee and tea are good for you, and chicken and fish oil and olive oil and wine and soy are all health foods. All that stuff is bad for you. The average person is easily fooled by bogus science. They have a lot of respect for something that comes from a big name place. And again, in the modern world, the word science really just means advertising most of the time. Okay, so the skeptical reader says, will you stop with all this theoretical BS? I asked a simple question. Are coffee and tea good for you? Okay, Vegan Prophet responds. The reason for the preamble is that it helps you to see all the internet puff pieces for what they really are that recommend coffee and tea. And then I also have SM for Silicone Man. Most doctors and scientists drink coffee and tea. Are you saying they're ignorant? And I'm saying, Plant Man Prometheus, yes, they are. Most doctors and scientists don't know anything about nutrition, and most of them are very conformist. They just copy what they see the old doctors and scientists doing. I didn't drink any coffee or anything with caffeine in it until I did my internship, and then I was having to take a lot of night call, and I was staying up and I was tired, so I started drinking it. Plus all the senior people, and it's very hierarchical in medicine. You want to be like them in a sense when you're starting out. So I followed them around and I drank coffee too. Okay, Rip Van Winkle's just another character I throw in there. He says, medical and scientific training programs, they use the young people to do all the nighttime shift work, and they then become addicted to coffee. And that's kind of funny. That lady, Starry Sanchik, she wrote that in her book. I thought that was clever, that basically doing a residency trains you to be unhealthy because you're constantly staying up at night, so you get sleep deprived. You're constantly in a hurry, so you're drinking junk food all the time, something brought by the drug reps or something from the vending machine. You're stressed out. There's a lot of pressure on you. Go faster, go faster, go faster. And stress increases cortisol and catecholamines. Catecholamines are adrenaline and noradrenaline. And sleep deprivation also is manifested and sensed by the body as stress. Caffeine does the same thing. It elevates cortisol and catecholamines. So it's a stress equivalent. And what stress is all about, the way to remember it, the metaphor in medical school, is being chased by a tiger in the dark. So if you're chased by a tiger in the dark, you need all that energy so you can run and climb a tree or something. Also, the tiger might scratch you and you could bleed, so it makes your blood prothrombotic. And Plant Man Prometheus, when somebody says, I'm so stressed out, I need a cup of coffee, that indicates a low nutrition IQ. Yeah, it's stupid because the coffee is just going to increase the same hormones that are making you stressed out. The cortisol will increase your blood lipids. When you increase blood lipids, you therefore increase insulin resistance. Okay, so you're going to increase insulin resistance, increase your risk of diabetes. Massive increase in cortisol can cause diabetes. Increased insulin resistance also predisposes to obesity. You can even get a movement of the weight around and a little bit of muscle wasting. You get bone wasting. It increases your risk of osteoporosis. And that increased calcium taken out of the bones, you'll increase more calcium excretion in the kidneys, increase your risk a little bit of kidney stones. Cortisol suppresses the immune system, so it has a bit of an immunosuppressant effect on a person, which you don't want, increasing your risk of having an infection, making you less able to heal something. It's a bit of a vasoconstrictor, can cause vasoconstriction, decreasing blood supply, including to the brain. That's more of a catecholamine effect. Catecholamines can function as siderophores, so sidero meaning iron, phore meaning to transfer. So they can increase the transfer of iron to bacteria, which will increase the risk of an infection, make it harder to heal something. Cortisol is associated with insomnia. It's the counterweight, the opposite on a seesaw between melatonin. So cortisol is what you get boosted in the morning to wake you up and get you going. Melatonin is what you ramp up at night to help you to fall asleep. So increased cortisol levels are associated with increased insomnia. Same thing with increased catecholamine levels. So you're increasing all the bad stuff with your extra caffeine. I mean, if you're totally exhausted and you have to drive, yeah, guzzle some caffeine to wake you up to make that drive successfully. But to do it habitually, it's detrimental to your health. And you get into a vicious cycle of caffeine worsening your sleep, so you're more tired the next day because you didn't sleep so well because of the caffeine. So then you drink more caffeine, and now you're more tired the following night, and you never can break that cycle. Caffeine has a long half-life, about 6 to 8 hours, so that's a long time. So even if you drink it in the morning, it's not completely out of your system at night. You still got some floating around. And some people say, well, drink decaf. Well, decaf still has caffeine in it. And tea has got maybe less caffeine than coffee, but it can still have a lot of caffeine in it. Depends on how much you drink. Okay, sleep deprivation is associated with cognitive dysfunction. Yeah, and you're sleep deprived, you're stressed out, you're more anxious, you're more impulsive. You'll say stuff you didn't really mean to say. Your judgment, your ability to restrain yourself and stuff is decreased when you're sleep deprived. Cortisol is associated with obesity. Yep. Muscle wasting makes you weaker. Yep. You'll know in the weight room if you're stressed out, you don't lift quite as well. A little bit of like oomph, psyched up is good. Psyched up and stressed out are not the same thing. Okay, you want to be psyched up, but you don't want to be stressed out. Increase the risk of becoming fat and weak. When people take cortisol supplements, let's say for autoimmune disease, they get fatter. You get that buffalo hump obesity with a fat pad behind your neck. You get a moon faces from the cortisol. Okay, cortisol and catecholamines together, they increase blood pressure. There's a little bit of a mineralocorticoid effect on the kidneys. You'll resorb sodium, so you'll have increased sodium that'll help retain water and raise your blood pressure a bit. Catecholamines will increase contractility and heart rate. That'll raise your blood pressure a bit. Hypertension over time causes more atherosclerosis and everything bad that goes with that. Coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction, impotence, stroke. Catecholamines increase heart rate, which can increase the risk of atrial fibrillation in vulnerable persons. They make the blood more prone to clotting It can become more hypercoagulable. It'll elevate fibrinogen, von Willebrand factor, factor 8, which is also called antihemophilic factor. These all increase your risk of clotting, and they'll also increase platelet activation. Some papers have suggested increased platelet activation increases the risk of metastatic cancer spread because activated platelets can cover up the traveling metastasizing cells in the blood and hide them from the immune system. I think sodium can worsen that as well. And you get increased sodium in the blood from the cortisol effect, mineralocorticoid effect that it has on the kidneys. Hypercoagulable blood is beneficial if a tiger scratches you, but you don't want it for other reasons. You don't want it if you're just a regular modern person who's not that active, because it can increase your risk of atherosclerosis, a blood clot, increase your risk of forming a clot, plugging up arteries. Okay, cortisol increases glutamate in the hippocampus. Like if you're a regular person calmly walking down a path in the forest, and all of a sudden you see, a couple coyotes or something, your stress level goes up, and that increases glutamate transmission in the hippocampus. And it can chronically, like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, when it's chronically elevated, it can have a excitotoxin effect. And it kind of pushes you, when you're stressed out, into a fight or flight mode, fight, flight, or freeze, which is like you have to ramp up from 0 to 60 miles per hour in terms of your intensity of response. So that will also have a vasoconstrictive effect from the catecholamines, and caffeine will do this as well. And you'll get less blood flow to your frontal lobes, but you get more to sort of your medial temporal lobes and your limbic system, meaning like your mammal brain rather than your cerebral cortex, your human primate brain, so to speak, that's more sophisticated. Instead, you're into more of a primitive fight, flight, or freeze. Cortisol will also increase urinary excretion of magnesium and potassium. Those are vasodilators, so you don't want to do that. That means when you lose your vasodilators, plus you're retaining sodium, you're predisposed to high blood pressure. Sodium's a vasoconstrictor, okay, and a volume retainer. And you're losing the good guys, magnesium and potassium, the things that come from plants. You'll also lose more calcium in your urine, so you'll increase your risk of kidney stones. So what I'm basically saying is caffeine does a lot of bad things. The purpose of psychological stress, and caffeine activates your sort of like your psychological stress mechanisms, is to get you to survive the next 15, 20 minutes and respond in a high energy, immediate way. It's not good for having this extra stuff like this on board all day. And if it just adds to the other excitotoxins we're typically exposed to, the caffeine and the cortisol, and that can, over time, increase your risk of cognitive impairment. Sometimes when you hear a coffee study, they'll say, oh, well, the caffeine drinkers are healthier. And I would predict that's because a lot of times you'll have different cohorts. You got people that are working and they're active and they're sort of more cognitively sophisticated compared to a population of people who aren't. Caffeine increases your risk of gastroesophageal reflux, GERD. Heartburn pain can be discomforting. Many people, in their coffee, they put milk into it, so then you got the side effects of milk. A lot of people put sweeteners in their coffee that are not healthy. Stevia, for example, increases infertility. Aspartame's a neurotoxin, excitotoxin in the brain. People ask, skeptical reader here, what about tea? Tea tends to have less caffeine. Is tea good for you? I know you hear a lot of advertisements about tea. I personally avoid it. In my experience, tea drinkers remind me a little bit of MJ smokers. They think they're more clever than they are, and they usually don't know what they're talking about. I know there's some exceptions to that, and I know there's some successful marathon runners from Kenya, for example, who drink a lot of tea and say it gives them energy. So, it hydrates them. Maybe a little bit of caffeine could be a good thing before a long-distance workout or competition, but on a daily basis, I don't think it's a good idea. Now, also, tea concentrates aluminum. Now, people will tell me, well, the aluminum that's concentrated by tea, less of it's absorbed. Somehow the tea decreases the amount absorbed. Maybe, but I don't want that aluminum anyway. So I would personally avoid it, even though I know that it's not as bad as you would think from looking at the numbers. Tea also will sometimes have a tendency to concentrate fluoride. Fluoride lowers IQ. I try to avoid that as much as I can. I won't drink water with fluoride in it. I'll avoid foods that have a tendency to concentrate fluoride. Soy can sometimes do that as well. I avoid both of those things. I don't drink any tea. I don't drink fluoride. One also has to be careful about some of these sort of exotic, rare herbal teas. In particular, that one, rooibos. Rooibos, I think that comes out of South Africa, but that can be associated with liver failure. That guy, Jeff Nelson from VegSource, his wife, he made a video about this. His wife got acute liver failure from that. Her bilirubin, which is made by the liver and excreted by the liver, went way up from that rooibos tea. Fluoride, like you said, is a pretty toxic thing, and I've given previous lectures on fluoride, all the toxic things that it does. It basically lowers IQ, makes you more docile, increases your cancer risk, accelerates aging, can damage protein structure, including collagen, and potentially cause a lot of problems from that. Okay, what about energy drinks? Energy drinks, I think, are for chumps. You know, they come in an aluminum can. Typically, you're going to get more aluminum in your drink. Typically, the aluminum's lined with BPA. Both BPA and aluminum are neurotoxic. They're both estrogenic. Why would I want to drink that? Okay, PMP, Plant-Man Prometheus. A lot of cans are lined with BPA, which is estrogenic. It's also a bit neurotoxic. It's also a mitochondrial inhibitor. Some energy drinks contain MSG. Okay. Rip Van Winkle comment here. If you're sleep deprived or tired and you have a long commute, then it might make sense. Yeah. But to do it on a routine daily basis is not a wise move. I did it for years. I didn't know any better. Okay, here's a good book, Caffeine Blues. It summarizes the research studies on it. And I noticed that, you know, like when I posted a video about the problems with caffeine, I get trolls. Oh, caffeine's good. Yeah, right. Okay. How could something that everybody will tell you stress is bad. They'll go through all the things stress does. Then they'll say, but caffeine's good. Yeah, right. That's how you recognize BS when, you know, you just ask yourself, what does caffeine do? Well, it's a vasoconstrictor, which lowers blood supply to the brain. That's bad. Well, it has a stimulatory effect on the hippocampus, increasing glutamate transmission. So it's an excitotoxin. That's bad. Simultaneous excitotoxin increased neuron metabolic rate with vasoconstriction, lowering oxygen and glucose delivery to the brain. That's bad. I don't want that. Pumping out more calcium into my kidneys, so I got increased risk of kidney stones. That's bad. Causing more urinary excretion of magnesium and potassium. So I lose my vasodilators. I'm an increased risk for vasoconstriction. That's bad. So just looking at what it does, you know it's bad. So that's why when somebody, and it'll even be some famous people say, oh, coffee's good for you. I'm like, yeah, right, pal. Most of these people, they're all a bunch of wimps. I'm sorry, but there's a guy, for an example, and he's a nice guy. I like him. I think his name's Matthew Walker. He's like Mr. Sleep Expert, and he's a smart guy, and I've seen his talks. But I notice he kind of wimps out. He talks about caffeine, and he's like, well, you can have a little bit of coffee in the morning or drink some decaf. And I know what's happening. Like, why do people say stuff that kind of contradicts their main message? Like, anybody who wants you to sleep better, why would they tell you to drink any at all? And I know what it is from having made a YouTube channel. Whenever you criticize a popular food, your video will usually get shadow banned. So right now, because I'm criticizing caffeine, I'm criticizing coffee, I'm criticizing tea, this video will probably get half as many views as it otherwise would. Maybe only a third as many views. I just seen that. I've seen this, and I've made over 1,700 videos. I know what happens to a video. So on the one hand, like I said, I'm hesitant to speak and criticize these foods and all this stuff, but I really don't care. My channel's not monetized. I don't have any sponsors, so I don't have any obligations. I try to tell you the truth. I'm trying to be the best doctor I can be. So I'll just tell you the truth. And I think I have to talk about this stuff because people want to know about this stuff. It's useful to know. These are common things. So I'll just tell it like it is. And I think this book is good. And a lot of people will criticize this guy. Anytime you do something good and you try to help the peasants, let me tell you something. You always get attacked by a troll. It's just the way it is. Nobody the people with the big money, like the billionaire perverts, they do not want the proles to be well informed or well educated. Their attitude is, you guys are just sort of the useless eaters, and they don't care about you. They want to rip you off for money and then lower your numbers. It's just how it is. Okay, when I quit caffeine, it took me about 4 days to quit an individual cup, and I had cravings for about 2 weeks. I actually felt sad for about 3-4 days once I lost all those hormonal effects. Cravings for 2 weeks. I actually gave in and had 1 cup of coffee at 2 weeks, and then I was so hypersensitive by that time I couldn't sleep. I had really bad insomnia that night, and then I just quit cold turkey permanently after that. And then I had to quit the second cup because I was drinking 2 cups a day for over a decade. And I felt even more of the cravings after I quit the second cup. But that's been many years ago now, and I'm very glad to be done with it. So anyways, that's the scoop on caffeine and coffee and tea. I think they're bad for you. I hope that was interesting and helpful.